My name is Douglas Kellner. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask the other commissioners to introduce themselves.
Evelyn Aquila.
Jim Walsh and Gregory Peterson.
I'll ask the staff to introduce themselves.
Bob Brehm.
Liz Hogan.
Bill McCann. Dan Valvo.
Elizabeth Mallory.
John Conklin.
Tom Connolly.
Pat Campion.
Bob Warren.
Anna Svizzero.
Paul Collins.
Kimberly Galvin.
Todd Valentine.
And would our guests introduce themselves, please?
Don Lightow from ESMS.
I'm Angela Dickens from Students First.
Josh Oppenheimer with Greenberg Ford.
And Bob Grunsnack from NYSDEC.
Thank you, and you're all welcome. We begin with the meeting of the Board of Canvassers to certify the amended election results for the general election for justices of the Supreme Court in the 3rd Judicial District. The staff has put together an amended canvass report. Is there a motion to adopt the amended report?
So moved.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that is done, and we'll sign the canvass. So that concludes the agenda for the Board of Canvassers, and we'll now begin the meeting of the commissioners of the State Board of Elections. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes for December 15th, 2011. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Those in
Aye.
favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are adopted. Now we'll proceed with our unit updates. We'll start with our executive directors, Todd Valentine and Robert Brehm.
A few items, I think of note, January 4th was the governor's State of the State address. And in addition to all of the lovely things that got most of the attention, there were a few items in his message related to our office. He had 4 proposals that he touched on that perhaps we'll hear more of when we get his budget or other legislation, but the 4 items that he mentioned were publicly funding of elections is a proposal, lower contribution limits for offices, lower contribution limits for public contractors and lobbyists, and a reference to a new enforcement or enhanced enforcement here at the State Board. We anticipate the budget is due out on Tuesday the 17th, so I don't know what we can anticipate to see in the budget other than what we've submitted, which was, what they directed us to give them was a flat budget from last year and keep focus on the spending cap that we had last year. There was a report out today, and I mentioned to Todd this morning that I saw with the anticipation that the agencies are all going to have across the board 2.5% cut. I probably, but we'll see that on Tuesday, and hopefully the savings that we accrue by not paying rent with the restacking of the agency will be able to cover that 2.5% as well as give us flexibility to do other things we haven't been able to do because the rent will be more than 2.5%. So hopefully they won't take all the rent away. And in the end, we still will have some ability to provide. Well, it's can only have hope. Can only have hope.
Well, the 2.5 is I was on the television last night, too.
I've heard a talk of it. I mean, they mentioned it last year that they thought we were going to have to get 2.5% savings in the current fiscal year, and then going forward. And then when they settled all the contracts, the word that we got was they're not going to do it in this fiscal year, which would have been hard because we're pretty close as it is. And there's only a few weeks left in the fiscal year to get those savings. So that would have been that savings would have been hard. But and the other item is moving the agency. I don't know if you want to touch on that, Todd.
Well, I mean, there's a projected schedule for moving in mid-March, but to date, the elements that need to come together for that have not happened yet, which is twofold. I mean, primarily it's moving the facilities for our database, housing that, and the appropriate connectivity to both our disaster recovery site as well as all the counties. The concept right now is to build a data center for other agencies or expand an existing data center in a remote location, and we connect to that. None of that work has been done yet. So I suspect, and we're planning on a meeting the 23rd, our next restacking meeting with the OGS, to see if that schedule gets adjusted. But the sooner we move, as Bob pointed out, the more savings we'll have. So, we want to move because we can use that savings for other things. It's very useful to us, and it's there'll be some disruption. We understand that, but it also needs to be done in an orderly process because at the same time we know we have an election in April that the counties need to connect to the database to audit that and produce their poll books, and then we also need to worry about we don't know what the rest of the election cycle is going to be right now. Well,
I know.
week or two we all know, but so they are sensitive to that and are well aware of that, but it also puts us with a pinch, especially if the budget comes out and shows, which I presume it will, the savings related to us not paying the rent anymore. So, and if that doesn't come to fruition, then we're going to have to figure something else out. So.
We'll talk about that later on, about both of you have visited the new spot.
We have. We went over last week for a meeting we took our technical people with regards to the database facilities. There are some facilities in the building, but there's not that much space within the existing facility because it's not going anywhere. So, and we have some additional security requirements that we need to have in place for our system. We have to limit the access to that, to a controlled access to that. That's not impossible, but the problem we have is the way our architecture is set up for the system. To connect to the counties, it's very specific because we have established a virtual private network, so we cannot compromise that. And the connectivity at that building is not up to the same standard here. You would think it's only a block away, you'd be able to get to the same pipe. Not true. And moving out to there's a state office campus just a few miles west of here, that has the same problem. Yes, there is part of the cable is there, but it doesn't go to the building we need it to go to, so somebody's going to have to dig a trench and move it there. So, well, while we were there, they invited us to go tour some of the other floors where there are two agencies in particular that are already in the process of moving out of that. And they were very nice. They showed us what, it's basically a large donut with a central core of elevators, stairways, that sort of thing. And then the office spaces around it. It's an open floor plan with limited office space, just due to the air conditioning and environmental controls. But the funny thing, after we toured, people were very nice. They showed us around. They showed us what offices they had. The furniture is not as good as our furniture, but that's another story. But the funny thing was, when we get back, we get a nice little email from the OGS Real Property Division, which they're the state's landlord, telling us we shouldn't have gone over unless we had been escorted. So we kind of laughed at that. It's like they told us to.
Did you steal some pens while you were over there?
It was very nice. I don't know what happened. We didn't make any rude comments.
Pens were as bad as the furniture.
It's funny. So we're just laughing that off. It's like, yeah, whatever,
I'm sure that's ingratiating us to them right now.
Oh, yeah, I doubt they're watching.
I think every agency is
They're watching.
Yeah, so, but, in general, the facilities are fine, and we'll be able to work out the logistics that we have now. It's just, I don't think it's gonna happen in the time frame that they think it's gonna happen, because, and we're not the only agency in that same problem. This database facility that they need to was not really anticipated with moving the personnel to the extent that it needs to be done. So if they had thought of it, now it's not to say that they're not blind to this, it's just, it's turning into a much bigger job because they really do need to segregate agencies which have particular security needs, and for us, particular connectivity needs to the counties. So, we don't just need to set up an area network for all our employees. We need to reach out to the entire state, but in a very specific manner. And
This is a very big year for us too. with
It is a big year
presidential.
for us. You know, we were very upfront about that, and they respect that and understand that, but they also see that, you know, we're an agency that's ripe for moving because our lease is up from month to month. And, you know, we'd like to have the savings, you know, because it is a considerable amount of rent if we can save it. We've asked time in the past when the lease was originally up, which state space available. At the time, it was not. So, you know, we think the location is good. It's only a block just south of here, so.
Yeah. Well, that's not my concern. My concern is the upheaval of everything during a
Yes.
time when we have a presidential election and all that we have going on, you know. We don't
Yeah.
even have some of the dates yet. We're waiting for the,
It's a problem.
for the federal court to give us a date and for.
Any day now.
I know, so, and there's a lot of things
Yeah.
happening.
Well, on that note, why don't we turn to Kim Galvin to give us the legal report?
Well, there's no decision from Judge Sharp yet on the, as
bless.
Commissioner, and moving the primary, I really, we're waiting. It could be any day, could be, who
Is he in the
knows?
midst of a criminal trial or
I
something?
have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that, I mean, there was a lot before him, there's a lot of issues, there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that, you know, he's taken into consideration, and I'm sure he's being very diligent in his consideration of
do
the
too.
issue. Other than that, in the anxious waiting, because so many things revolve around that particular decision, the routine business of, our written report pretty much says it all, but the routine business of the unit is keeping us busy, and we've also spent a great deal of time doing follow-up with regard to that federal case as it relates to the 2010 ballot reconciliation efforts, which is the sometimes forgotten part of that lawsuit. Tom Conley has done a very thorough and great job in the agency outreach to the counties themselves when there's a ballot discrepancy, and we've had multiple calls with the Department of Justice in which we've exchanged information and reasoning and rationale, and attempt to winnow down that list of resurvey counties that ultimately results from that moving the primary lawsuit. And it's continuing. Our last call was yesterday. We provided them with a great deal of information, and they said they're going to, you know, get back to us and thank you for our efforts and all that stuff. Paul has been updating the legal update for the conference that's coming next week and the other preparations that are required for that, the Commissioners' Conference. And other than our written report, I think the only other important thing to note is that on the other federal lawsuit involving the machines and the database, as you know, we've had a bit of an impasse with New York City and their list maintenance. We have seemed to, we've made great progress, I think, on both fronts, both on the manual list maintenance and the technological development needed to put a primary fix in place that's acceptable for all of us to use the system as it's intended. We've had multiple calls with the Department of Justice on that as well, and multiple calls with New York City in which they provided us with a report showing that they are manually cleaning their lists. They've done what appears to be a very, very good job in doing that, removing tens of thousands from my count off the purge so far, and they're in the process of doing another run to get more voters off, and they've also agreed to continue to do that and report to us every 60 days so that we might keep the Department of Justice informed.
Kim, they're not taking voters off, they're taking duplicates off.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Duplicate. I'm sorry about that.
They don't want anyone listening in, so you're removing
Duplicates,
voters.
sorry, my bad. We put together we have another joint report with the Department of Justice due today, and follow up from the one last month. We've put some language together, just particularly on the status of New York City and the efforts they're making, which is a positive thing, and we've provided that to the Department of Justice. He called me, the person handling it called me late last night. It's in the review process, and they seem to be completely satisfied with the situation, and we're gonna file that report today. So unforeseeing any change between now and when we get their edits back, I think it should be pretty standard filing. And other than that, you know, we've just been working along. If anybody has any questions.
Kim, we don't deal with Mr. Heffernan anymore, do we?
No, he retired. God bless him.
I knew that. I didn't know whether you got.
We pushed him out, I think.
No, he retired on his own.
Well, I don't know. He said goodbye before he left, so and there's I think a young attorney named Justin Weinstein-Tull who's handling, he'd had worked with Brian Heffernan, overlapped for some period of time, and he's pretty hip on us, if you will, and he's doing a nice job as the liaison there.
Kim, you didn't mention the legislative package. Where do we stand with that now?
Well, I know that there was more meetings on that, and I only participated very
Well, we were getting comments back in the night.
accidentally. We are getting the comments back from the counties that we sent out the last time. With the new development, there's been continuing meetings.
New York
about-
City, I saw Pam Perkins at the State of the State, and she, and because of the holidays, had overlapped with Dawn. So I talked with Pam at the State of the State, and then I talked with Dawn shortly after. They had asked their units in the city board to get them their comments by last Friday, and they were trying to have a meeting this Monday. We still hadn't received their feedback to that, but just their verbal to us said they had some things they'd like to talk to us about. So, you know, they're the ones who really need this help to get, you know, not that everybody in the whole state can't use a rewrite of that section, so.
Yeah, they did say they sent out to their unit heads or whatever they did.
I knew when Kim had her other items that she needed the city's attention on for the Department of Justice, that we couldn't ask them to do both at the same time. And we knew the result would be they might only do ours and not theirs. So.
But I think they're doing both.
They are working on the answer for us, and I know we'll talk to them on Tuesday when we see them at the conference, so. From that perspective, you know, we had some comments from the county commissioners that we've shared, and they had some suggestions from, because it went to the legislative committee. We know they're going to discuss it on Tuesday.
Good.
Up there, so they have the information, and we just have to put their comments into cleaning it up a little bit.
Good. It's moving forward. That's what we want to hear.
Anything to add, Paul?
No, it's all pretty well in the report, the cases which I'm handling. We haven't got a decision from the Nassau voting machine case that I'm waiting on, and the other federal cases, one of them, the Gramalik case, is fully briefed, submitted. The other one, Schultz case, they haven't filed that brief yet. Election law update for 2012 is done.
It's a great job and good reading. And if anyone wants one, they should just send an email to Paul or Kim, and Paul.
We're going to send it out electronically. Paul's going to all the commissioners.
Whatever our handouts are at the conference next week, usually Anna, through OPS, sends copies out to everybody.
So some of the election lawyers who aren't commissioners might
sure.
benefit from that also.
Yeah, we get a lot of requests for that, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's
Handy.
probably the best compilation of election law cases that's out there right now. So it's a good job.
May I just say, since I won't be at the conference, that I apologize for not being at the conference. I think it's the first one I've ever missed, but my nephew is being married in Florida, and unfortunately, I have to be there.
Well, for-
Fortunately, maybe, I can't be too hot.
Break. For the first in 20 years, you can be forgiven, and
Right.
congratulations to your family. So let's hear from Anna Svizzero to do the report for election operations.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a couple of items to add to our written report. We provided the proclamation and the other information, including the calendar related to the special elections that were called by the governor this past week. There are 5 of them, 1 Senate seat and 4 Assembly seats. 2 of the Assembly seats file ballot access documents with us, so we have staff ready to receive those, and we'll deal with whatever gets filed with us. We're also preparing for the filings related to the presidential primary. Those will be due in February. The certification resolution, which is before you, has occupied us all. I would like to commend Bob Warren and his team. I think the staff has worked admirably to put together test plans. We assumed all of the functional testing responsibilities rather than contract that out to our lab. And I think that you'll be impressed with the work that we did, that they did, and with the report that was written and with the work that is before you by way of a vote on the certification itself. We prepared conference presentations, worked with others in the agency that are doing the same thing, and I don't have anything beyond that for an update other than what's in our written report.
Any questions? So we'll turn to public information. John Conklin.
Thank you, Commissioner. We don't really have too much to add to the written report. Donna and Patrick have completed the review of all the county poll site surveys, and Tom is going to follow up with any of the ones that are missing. We're going to be sending a letter out to the counties asking them to reply to that. Greg and Patrick continue to process poll site and training vouchers, and basically we just want to remind the counties to complete their quarterly reports and send them in. So, do you have anything to add, Tom?
No. All right, well, thank you. We'll do campaign finance, Elizabeth Hogan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I really have nothing to add to the written report that was submitted to you through the packet. I'll point out two things, though, that the January 2012 periodic filing is due. This year it will be due on January 17th, which is different. So I note that for anybody who has an interest in that, and that's because of the way the days fall, the Sunday and the holiday. Cutoff date then for the filing is tomorrow, which is January 13th. The other thing I just bring to your attention, and that's on in the new business, is the draft for the independent expenditure regulation, which we were charged with drafting to reflect existing law as applies to the reporting of independent expenditures. But other than that, I think everything, pretty much routine things are in the report. Bill, do you want to add anything?
No.
Everything's going so smoothly this week.
It's a new year.
New year, the
Way to
12th.
start off the year, right?
So
They were just here.
we'll turn to information technology and welcome Dan Valvo to the table.
They are for a comment to Investment.
Thank you. Okay, email migration, we physically moved our email group-wide system to Outlook on December 8th. We have a couple issues, as everybody knows, but we're working through them, and we appreciate everyone's patience. The 40 North Pearl restack, Todd mentioned most of what I was going to say, but we do have calls with AT&T and Time Warner next week to discuss our requirements for Nysboe and the Nysboe side. The MOVE Act, we are working with Seidel on a VPN connection, and our website has moved from elections.state.nyu.s to elections.ny.gov. The EFS software is currently in beta testing and is available to selected users on our website. And our help desk has been fielding calls and collecting comments from people using the software. We completed the 2011 annual security gap analysis. Staff processed the 32-day post-general filing. Filings received for the 27-day post-general were 2,700, and the help desk received 151 calls for the month of December. And that's all I have. Do you have any? That's great.
150 of them were us on
Where do we stand on the testing of the upgrade to the campaign finance filing system?
Well, it's in the beta stage. We have, I think, upwards of about 24 maybe people who are participating. We have a liaison group through our education people and campaign finance, working with the people in IT. What's happening is this select group of people has been asked to use the new software to affect their filing for January. What we're doing then is we are taking and categorizing any comments or questions relative to the software, any problems. And after the filing, we'll do a final assessment and we'll meet internally to decide if there are any changes that need to be made to the software to reflect problems or issues. And then what we'll do is have a final version of it. So, our plan, of course, with, I think, as my report indicated, I think active filers is up over 12,000 at this point. Our intention was to make the software available to new filers, to new treasurers, so that that's the software they were going to go with. And certainly to any existing filers who wish to upgrade to that new software. But it would be near impossible for us to expect 12,000 filers to suddenly start using a new software. Our system would just crash.
Sure.
And we're holding it together with a, tape now.
So when do you anticipate that new filers will be given the new system?
I would say we'll do an assessment after the January periodic filing, probably the end of January. Develop, I think, Elizabeth, what do you think? Develop any tweaks probably in February and then have a final version available at that point?
I haven't really been involved
Okay.
with that, so,
Okay.
but we can find.
Yeah, I mean,
let's,
hoping.
we can work with you on that.
But that's our time frame. I'd say within a few months.
In time for use in the July periodic, is that what you're
Yes.
referring to?
I believe so.
I mean, the logistics is going to be the major issue because.
Just the training.
Well, training and staff resources, are the call centers, for instance, between the two units are only a handful of people. And if you do a general rollout to the whole 12,000 people, now you're looking at.
Yeah, we can't do that, obviously.
We just logistically.
No, I like the idea of phasing it in with new
Right.
filers and those who ask to
So we
switch.
have to look, we're still doing an analysis of what that implementation would be. So
But we think within a few months we'll be able to sit down and have a new discussion about any issues that have come up over the initial use of it by the beta group. So I think that's reasonable. Of course, the issue that is always outstanding, and as we have brought to you before, I think earlier, maybe in a board meeting last summer, was with the changes in technology so quickly. And, we had discussed that people who are not using desktop computers, who are using iPads and tablets, this is not available to them. Our software, we're really in a very precarious place.
Yeah.
We have done this fix to try to accommodate, making filing easier, but it doesn't address the issues of the need for a new software that is much more technologically feasible at this point.
Or
That
web-
hasn't been addressed.
Or web-based.
And there'll be some cost.
Especially a web-based filing.
What about the cost?
Well, there is a cost, and we have made a request in our budget every year since I have been here to try to
Yes,
address
I know
these
that.
thing, but
Yeah.
we're not getting anywhere with getting any funding for that.
I know
So,
that,
that's where we
Excuse
are.
me, what is that cost, approximately?
Well, what we initially asked for, as I can recall, Bob, in our last side letter last year for the budget, we were asking for about 300,000
it was
for the
300,
initial
350,000.
assessment.
That's what you
It
asked
was
for,
less than
300,000.
five, but-
Yeah.
It was less than
Yeah,
five,
it
so I
was
think it was
somewhere around
3.5 or
350.
something.
Yeah.
And we were asking for that for the initial assessment of, okay, if we are gonna go there with a new method of software and a new access, what are we gonna, what's it gonna entail? What will it entail
Yeah.
building and what the cost might be? So initially, we were thinking, and this year, of course, I don't know when we do our side letter, maybe more, we haven't
We
yet
haven't done a side
discussed
letter
it.
yet, but generally a gap analysis of what the system currently isn't doing and what it needs to do is a building block to some kind of
Things are changing like this.
Yes.
a recommendation, but
Technology.
there hasn't been a lot of money to
No.
study
No,
that.
but I think
gap.
we would have to ask them for, probably at this point, $400,000 to do this, because every year that we ask, the next year, when it doesn't happen, we have to build in
Sure.
the additional costs of just general cost increases. So, we ask, that's the initial step that we need, is to have our system assessed and our needs assessed. And we have not been able to get a foot in the door at this point to do that.
I know this is not for you to answer, but are other state agencies as technologically behind as we are, or some more advanced than we?
I believe that a number of them are
Mixed
more
bag.
advanced. I mean, there are, we do filings as attorneys, we do filings of financial disclosure filings of our own that, we have to submit in May, and it's a web-based filing system, and from what I understand, COPE, which is the previous Ethics Commission, which now is defunct, and now it's the JCOPE Commission, it's my understanding that their software is built out to reflect current technologies, and so it's not the entire state that is in the position that we're in, but the discussion relative to the whys and the wherefores of that, I'm not in a position to discuss with you.
No. Thank you.
That hurts, though. It hurts us in a way.
All right. If there are no other questions, we'll proceed with new business, since we don't have any old business. And the first item on the agenda is the resolution to upgrade election systems and software DS200 precinct-based optical scan voting system and optical scan voting system companion automark ballot marking device.
We have Bob Warren here to answer any questions that you might have concerning the reports that we provided or the resolution itself.
Well, I do have a few questions, and I should note that this is actually a historic occasion, because if we approve this resolution, it will be completing the certification of the ES&S DS200 that has now been ongoing for 3 years, 4 years.
Yes, you're right. 3 or 4 years.
So, Bob, you just want to review the documentation of what's the vendor has submitted in order to accomplish this final certification and upgrade?
Yeah, the vendor submitted the source code and the TDP to originally to Wiley Labs, where Wiley Labs went through and did a review to the EAC standards. The review of that work, along with the source code and TDP, went to our lab, SLI, formerly SysTest, where they performed a source code review of all the executable changes. They compared the version that was submitted against the version that was originally certified, and the changes, the executable changes that kicked out, they reviewed those to ensure that they adhered to the VVSG, state laws and regulations. They then did a review of the TDP to assure that the TDP met the requirements of our matrix that we provided them. From that, we received a trusted build that we could perform functional testing on, because the state performed the functional testing on this upgrade. And once we confirmed the functional test and we reviewed all the open issues, because there were open issues left from the source code review, and we applied the same procedure that we had from the original certification. As you remember, in the original cert, we had a list of open items, and part of this certification effort was to go through those items to verify that they truly had been fixed. SLI provided responses to those items. We sat down with NYSTEC and went through each of the items, and we were able to close those items out from the source code perspective. During this effort, we did the same process. We created a list. We had an open items list, and we maintained that through the process. Our approach was to ensure that any item that was on that list didn't affect the integrity of the voting system, from the scanner to the counting of the results. There were 4 or 5 items when we were done that were related to the DS200, so we requested that the vendor go back and fix those items before we presented for certification. They did. That source was presented back to SLI for review. Once that was completed, we then did our witness build. And during the witness build, we were able to sit and we watched it via Skype, so we could watch the process of the witness build being done down in Alabama. So from this, we did end up with a listing of open items. We are confident that none of those items affect the integrity of the voting. We proved that out through our functional testing. We ran 10 test cases on the system. We have all that documentation if anybody needs to see it. and that we compared those results to the tapes off the scanner, the results on the EMS system, we verified the reports on the EMS system, and we verified the ballot images that are presented within the EMS system. So we do have some items, and we will maintain those items as we did from the prior certification going forward, that in the next version that comes out, we will just verify that those items have been removed or closed out or whatever. Oh, and one last note, just so that in case anybody's confused, there's been a lot of talk of ES&S system being decertified, and that relates to Cuyahoga County in Ohio. But I just want to assure you that the version that they are on is a different version that we were ever started with. They are on a 1.4 version on their DS200. We're on version 2.1. The version that they started with was just a version ported over from the original ES&S M100 system. Ours was a complete rewrite that they used, so those issues were never introduced into our system.
I think that's worth emphasizing, because people who follow that hear DS200 and they know that Cuyahoga County, Ohio is using the DS200, but it's not actually the same.
It's not the same firmware.
Same machine that we have. I guess it's a little bit of a sidetrack, but you did go through the issues raised by the EAC with the Cuyahoga County scanners, right?
Yes.
And what did you find in terms of how those issues relate to the system that's used in New York?
Well, the specific issues that they had in Cuyahoga, one was the machine freezing up and shutting down. And that was due to, from the reports that I received, the system being started without a memory stick in. And then the system would do a check every 8 seconds or so to determine whether there was a memory stick. It would write an entry to the log each time it did a check, and eventually the log would fill up. The calibration settings for the system were maintained in that same memory location as the log, and it rendered the machine useless at that point, even if you put the memory stick in.
Yeah.
So that was one issue. We don't have that. We can start our machine, and our machine will have no issue sitting there. It'll do one check, and it'll just sit there and respond that you need a memory stick. The other issue they had was with a ballot skewing issue, where it was counting phantom votes because the ballot was skewed. Our system will check for the integrity of the ballot. It'll self-adjust as the ballot's being scanned through if that were to occur.
All right.
Bob, you have given me an education in this over these last couple of months, and I thank you and Anna very much.
Take me to Florida with you.
No. Wedding bells are ringing.
Bob, now you mentioned that there were several open items that were going to be carried over for the next version. Do you want to go through? I mean, I have the written report, but I think that people are still interested in knowing the specifics, since some of these issues are not going to be public, to explain what the open items are and how they don't affect the actual operation of the system.
Well, one that comes to mind that, and they're all similar in nature, is that there was one issue that the VVSG says that you can't assume a buffer size is large enough. Well, there's a buffer within the ERM system that the vendor has set to hold a value of 2.1 billion. Well, I don't think we have 2.1 billion voters in New York State, so that will never be an issue for us. So we've recorded that as an informational item. We will then have the vendor go back and adjust that so that it follows the VVSG. But it's issues like that we've left. We've made them all informational so that we'll maintain those as we go forward and verify those.
I also saw that there were a couple of source code reference issues where the documentation does not strictly conform to the rules of the voluntary voting system guidelines, but Again, they don't affect the actual operation of the program and code, right?
It's more of a programmer styling issue. I mean, the VVSG wants the programmer to follow certain styling of the code. And then there's a few instances in there where the ES&S programmer didn't follow that styling, but it doesn't affect the functionality of the code. It's more for maintainability, so that if we were ever to, if ES&S went out of business and the code was given to us, everybody knows how to look at that code, that it follows these standards, so that if it's all the same, somebody could sit down and potentially be able to work on the code.
I did review each of the findings that were contained in the report, and I concur that none of them even remotely affect the actual operation of the system. And so I agree with your recommendation that we not further delay the implementation of the upgrade, particularly since we have the upgrade involves accomplishing the settlements of 2 of the pending lawsuits. And I also note that you had a couple of dozen items that we had left open when we initially certified the DS-200 in December of 2009. And all of those security issues have been either satisfactorily resolved, or the security people have reviewed to explain why the VVSG does not properly address the issue, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that, so there are some very technical changes that we've alerted the Election Assistance Commission about that should be corrected in the VVSG.
Yes.
I guess an example is one that we as laymen are easier to explain, although some of these were technical source code security issues, that in the course of our test, the VVSG sets a maximum volume for the sound on the automark, and the maximum sound makes sense if there's no other sound in the room. But if you're in an auditorium or a gymnasium or a cafeteria where there's a huge amount of ambient noise, that maximum volume set by the voluntary voting system guidelines
Doesn't apply.
is not high enough so that you can hear the voting machine over the background noise in the room. And so obviously that guideline needs to be changed, and it would be a mistake for us to just slavishly adhere to the guideline where the guideline itself appears to be wrong. And there are a couple of technical issues that I believe that NYSTEC and Wiley and the vendor have all raised concerning some of the technical source code documentation issues. Am I correct in explaining it, or
Sure.
do you want to add anything to it?
No, that's correct. There are things within the VVSG that, it probably leads to like interpretation of what the regulation is not quite clear, or there's issues, as Commissioner Kellner just said, where they fit in a perfect world but not in the real world. And so those have to be hopefully addressed at some point.
We took the board's direction to heart, that when we had to make that kind of interpretation, we did it with some common sense. For example, the decibel testing that you mentioned, the sand testing was related to tanks in a desert. It wasn't related to stuff that falls out of ceiling tiles. I mean, the tests just didn't make sense in the world in which these systems were used. So we did take the board's direction to heart when we explored all of those issues, so that we didn't burden the process with testing dynamics that just could not ever be achieved.
Well, I still think we should be very proud that I think the testing system that New York State has used is the best that I'm aware of any jurisdiction, either nationally or internationally, in terms of the thoroughness of the testing that these systems have undergone. And I want to thank the vendor for their cooperation in going through this process. I think they have an excellent product that they should be proud of. Thank the staff here for their efforts in sticking with this and also insisting that the guidelines be adhered to the extent that that they should be, and also our friends at NYSTEC who have provided such valuable assistance, as well as our testing laboratories. So on that basis, I'm prepared to move adoption of the resolution.
We have one correction to make to the record. The
two screen changes you referred to are not in this version. They'll be coming in a version early spring.
Oh, I thought
we're
they
going to be
were
getting
in
another
this.
version. We're getting this version out.
They're in part of the source, part of the report. Okay, go ahead.
They're going to be coming in a version that will be hopefully released to us in April of this year, that we will quickly turn around.
But New York City needs this version now in
For the
order for
primary.
the presidential primary,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's why we wanted to get this out quickly.
Second your motion?
Okay.
Aye.
So those in favor of adopting the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is adopted.
I think we saw a lot of good things when we were out, too, in the counties. We saw a lot of good people and good operation of the machines.
And we're still looking forward to the completion of the testing process for the Dominion image scan,
Yes.
image cast.
And they've both promised central count scanners, which some of the counties have expressed interest in. So we have that on the horizon.
What
as
is the
well.
current schedule for completing the image cast upgrade?
We're hoping to have it ready for the April meeting. Now, they're only going to have their changes, their screen changes for those two court cases will be in that build that we're going to receive hopefully next week to begin our testing.
And have they addressed all of the security issues that were raised in the conditional certification in December of '09?
We'll know within 2 weeks when we get the final source code review from SLI.
Okay. All right, next is the resolution to post for comments the amendment to Part 6200.10 of the regulations regarding independent expenditures. Liz and Bill, you want to just explain briefly what the agency is proposing?
The agency is proposing, as we had been directed in Chapter 399 of 2011, that we create a regulation that reflects the existing law regarding the reporting of independent expenditures. So what we did was to create a document that we hope fulfills the mandate to be an educational source. As you look at it, you see there are topical headings, and we feel it's in a logical presentation about what has to be done in order to make and report an independent expenditure. And it's ready to be posted for public comment and be sent through the process.
Any questions? Those in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the resolution is adopted.
Oh, yes.
We just have one item we wanted to add to your consideration. This leaves, technically, it leaves our building and it goes to a new group that's called the Regulatory Review Unit. It replaces the former Gore Governor's Office of Regulatory Reform. Governor Cuomo rescinded that earlier executive order that created that agency, and now regs go through the Deputy Secretary, the Council, and this review unit, so it will go to them. And all we're asking is allow, if there are any non-substantive changes, because often at this level there will be very minor grammar, numbering kind of issues that we need to clean up just to get it posted. So if you would allow us to make those changes to keep it going, you're going to have to make the ultimate vote to accept the final document after the process.
Yes, after public comment.
As opposed to coming back to you for any of those non-substantive changes before we can post it.
Well,
Everyone agree with that?
No
those will be
problem.
made pursuant.
Those are the two of us who can do it.
Okay, all right. We have preliminary determinations on campaign finance enforcement issues. I understand that there's a proposal to lay aside 12-04. And so we'll be, unless someone wants to discuss them, we'll be voting on 12-02, 1151, 1147, 1140, 1138, 1130, 1126, and 1124. Is that okay? All right, those in favor of adopting the proposed reports, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so those reports are adopted. I don't believe there's any litigation that we need to discuss in executive session. So we just need to discuss the date for our next meeting.
Todd, you said after the 21st?
Yes.
And before March 1st. So after February 21st and before March 1st, so that we can get the certification done on time. And in that period of time is Ash Wednesday is the 22nd. But, so do we want to either that or the 28th if we need more time for you the next week? So
We're scheduling the drawing for ballot position on the 28th.
I mean, we could do it 23rd, 24th, 27th, 28th.
Or even.
Or 29th, it has to be done, but we have to certify by March 1st.
Okay, so March 1st would be no good.
Right.
So,
And we
Just
what
want
is
to
this,
give
a
as much time as
What is this, a
possible to-
Wednesday?
The 29th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, I do the 28th. Wednesday's hard for me because I
Tuesday the
teach
28th.
religion.
Just give me 1 second.
28th?
Tuesday the 28th.
That's okay.
His computer. Doug uses the computer, I use the book.
Well, if we have to do the 28th, we have to do
Some
the
of you use the
28th, the
computer.
pastor will just have to teach them, that's all. I teach one Wednesday.
I should have had it, I'm
In
sorry.
Brooklyn, and one Wednesday in New Jersey. I don't know which one is which one, I don't know where I am. 4th grade and 3rd grade. Neither are interested.
Closer, when's First Communion?
They've had it, they should, it's true, they don't have this.
Well, those usually have specific
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
It'll get there, it'll come, it'll come.
He's waiting for it to pop out. This is a step to the future. We have to sit around and wait.
Hey, now I could file a campaign finance report on my back. if I
Are you
want.
running?
After 5, no.
The governor, please stay on.
It's been 6 years, right? We've been trying to get that system in place. All right, my calendar.
What's the date?
We're working on it.
February 28th is fine. Thank you. All right,
That's
so.
a Tuesday, right?
It's a Tuesday, correct.
So, we agree to.
Move adjourned.
Those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned till February 28th.
Thank you.
Thank you all.